Hi! It's Alex.
Me or you?
Yeah, this is Alex Scobell.
The awesome.
He's my creative soulmate. We do everything together.
Including...
Except sleep, because we're in different time zones.
That's true.
Yeah. He's gonna be...
Awesome.
Yeah,
Forever.
that's right, you beautiful man.
Kinda.
Okay, I'd like to introduce a new feature to the blog. The top of my head. For all you people watching, Bone by Jeff Smith is not just a great graphic novel, it also makes a dandy tripod. Except it's not a tripod, it's a block.
I think that's advice that we could all live by.
Okay, so what I'm doing today is, the other day I had a memory, a weird flashback from my childhood. Basically when I was young I really wanted to write a series of short mystery stories, okay? And the reason I wanted to do that is because I came up with a brilliant title for them, okay? The Mist Stories.
Well...
Yeah. That was the same era in which I distinctly remember I licked a wet calculator and ended up getting battery acid on my tongue. So I wasn't a great decision maker back then.
No, well, why do we always make, like, big decisions based off such superficial little things, like Johnny was based off a theme song that I made up?
Yeah, I guess nothing's changed.
No.
So anyway, I tried writing these things and I wasn't very good at writing mystery stories then. You know, of the caliber, I was into stuff like Goosebumps, etc. Were you ever into Goosebumps, Mr. Scobell? Silence. I think Google Talk's broken. Were you ever into Goosebumps, Mr. Scobell?
I remember their existence, and I remember the television program.
Never liked the television program.
I don't remember what happened.
I started reading the books once I worked out the formula. Basically, at the end of the second chapter, it would always end with like a shock, and then at the first page of the third chapter, it would turn out to have been a trick played by a friend. And that was in every single book.
So the bumps weren't as goosey as they claim to be?
I was also into this Christopher Pike guy, who I looked at the works of recently, and they are awful. He's a terrible writer.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's kind of true that kids are retards then.
Yeah.
With no taste.
Anyway, I'm not a child anymore, and my writing has probably improved, so here is my own attempt at writing a Goosebumps-esque story. It's, I wrote this at exactly 1:15 AM last night in bed. It's called Help.
It's gonna be good.
It's called Help. People around me are being turned into puddles of goo. A mist story. Chapter 1. Cordelia, a bright and studious girl with an attractive ponytail and glasses combo, finished off her extra credit essay and handed it in to her favourite and most trusted and least suspicious of teacher, Professor Moogonster. "This is wonderful work, Cordelia," said Professor Moogonster. Cordelia beamed with pride. "But now I must go and attend to other matters," he then said after finishing his previous sentence. "Toodle pip." Cordelia was still beaming with pride as she walked down the corridor. Just then a monster attacked her, which added fear into the mix of emotions she was feeling, which but a few seconds ago was predominantly pride, but was now mostly fear. Fear of monsters. Fear of scariness. I can't read my own handwriting.
I have that trouble a lot.
Chapter 2. It was surprisingly revealed that it was not a monster that had attacked Cordelia, but in fact Miley, the school bully. "Ha! You studious shrimp! Not so bright now, are you, teacher's pet?" "Yeah, right," snarled Cordelia, no longer beaming with pride. Miley's facial expression became marginally angrier. "Hey, no one talks to me like that, especially not a four-eyed shrimp." The previously unmentioned students began shouting, "Fight! fight, and a kerfuffle occurred in which Cordelia was pushed but stayed mainly passive. "Hey, break it up, you girls!" It was Principal Garter, who was bald. "Miley, I would have expected this from you, but I'm very disappointed in you, Cordelia. But, and now adding the repeated use of a rude word to your list of offenses. That's it. Detention for both of you tomorrow." As Principal Platter, he was called Garter on the last page, I must have forgotten, walked away with his bald head, Cordelia heard Miley muttering, "Dumb teachers, dumb adults, we don't need them. Sometimes I wish they'd all just turn to goo. Turn to goo. Turn to goo." Something about those words haunted Cordelia forever, but she paid them no more heed. She walked home, scowling with shame. Chapter 3. Scowling with shame, Cordelia walked home. "Mom, I'm home," she said, but her parents had been turned to goo by an evil goo monster. How could they have been turned to goo by an evil goo monster? And who, out of all the people I've come into contact with in the last 6 hours, could secretly be the goo monster, she thought aloud. Just then she saw Miley sneaking away. Miley, no longer... Well, I think that means Cordelia, no longer scowling with shame, decided to see the principal. "He'll know what to do," said Cordelia, while grieving. Chapter 4. Principal Platter was in his office the next day, but he had been turned into a pile of goo. "Try giving me a detention now," came a voice which came from a retreating Miley. "Miley must be the evil goo monster," thought and said Cordelia. "I must call the police." Chapter 5. Cordelia dialed 9, then 1, then 1 again, which is the number for the police in America. "Hello, this is the American police," said the American policeman. "Help! People around me are being turned into puddles of goo," explained Cordelia. "Ha! That's rich. Why should we believe you? You're just a kid, and besides, there's no such thing as goo." The police hung up. "Looks like I'm on my own," said Cordelia. "Well, well, well, if it isn't Shrimp Girl," said Miley. "Who said that?" said Cordelia.
This is getting exciting.
Chapter 6. The person turned out to be Miley. You've been turning people into goo," bellowed Cordelia. "What are you talking about, Shrimp?" bellowed Miley. "Girls, calm down," bellowed Professor Moogonster. "Professor Moogonster, Miley is a goo monster," said Cordelia. "A goo monster? As in, the kind of monster who does this?" Professor Moogonster turned Miley into goo, and that's when Cordelia realized that Professor Moogonster was a goo monster. "Of course I'm a goo monster child," said the goo monster. "A bright and studious girl such as yourself should have been able to solve the anagram in my name. Of course, your name is Professor Moogonster, but by switching the G and M around you get... Gasp! That's right, Professor Goo Monster! You're the Goo Monster!" It was clear now that Professor Moogonster was an anagram for Professor Goo Monster. "But what about the way in which I saw Miley at the scene of every goo monster attack, and the incriminating dialogue I heard from her?" expressed Cordelia. "Silly child, she was at those places and saying those things for entirely unrelated reasons," bellowed the goo monster. "It all made sense now. It all makes sense now," bellowed Cordelia. "Yes, and now, in accordance with my goo monster way of life, I shall transform you into goo." "No!" Yes! Chapter 7. Luckily, Cordelia defeated the goo monster and everyone changed back to normal, and then Cordelia suddenly woke up to find it was all a dream. Or was it, she bellowed, as certain elements from said dream were mysteriously present in the real world. The end. And it says here, finished at 2:15 AM approximately. So that took me a whole hour to write.
Wow. That is an amazing story that I think should be passed down to future generations so they can enjoy its nutrients of narration.
You crack me up, little buddy.